The 7th of June 2024, the biggest event in the Pokemon calendar, playing for $25,000. On the left, we have the stalwart veteran of the game, who has been in this exact seat twice before and has won both times. On the right, we have the newer upstart player, who has put up a generational couple of seasons. And somehow, with all those opposed storylines, we find ourselves staring down the most important coin flip in Pokemon history. How did it come down to this? Because at one point, Andrew looked dead in the water.
Stefan just needs to attack once more with Miracle Force and he will win this game.
So let's rewind and take a look. There probably isn't anyone else in the world who could feel more confident in this situation than Stefan Ivanov. His resume is extremely stacked. Namely, he has won NAIC twice in back-to-back years. Yet this event he is in right now. And there are some similarities between the decks that he won those previous titles with and the one he's playing now. Both decks before were built around Zoroark GX, a card whose ability would let you discard one card from your hand to draw 2 more from your deck. So with 3 or 4 Zoroark in play, you were drawing a ton of cards in a turn. And with its attack Riotous Beating, you would deal 20 damage for each Pokemon you had in play. So a nice and easy 120 damage most of the time. In 2018, Stefan played Zoroark with 2 Garbodor cards. The first would deal 20 damage for each item card in your opponent's discard pile, which is terrifying. And the other one would turn off all abilities if it had a tool card attached. And by using Klefki as your tool card, it was only your opponent who wouldn't be able to use their abilities, because the Klefki would get discarded coming into your turn, meaning Stefan was free to use trade as often as he liked. And in 2019, he paired Zoroark with a medley of different cards, but the combination he used to dismantle the Pikarom deck in the final was Dugong, who would do 60 damage to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon, so you would tag 2 tag team Pokemon, bringing them into range of Riotous Beating from Zoroark, and then you would use Stinger GX from Naganadel GX, so both players would have 3 prize cards remaining. This meant all Stefan would have to do is finish off a Pikarom to win. So with that being said, Stefan currently has won NAIC twice in back-to-back years, meaning he actually has more NAIC titles than the whole of the North American player base combined. And if he was to actually win this one, he would have won NAIC 50% of the time. That is unheard of levels of domination in the Pokemon TCG. But since that hefty 2018 and 2019 season, Stefan hasn't top cut an international championship or world championship. Sure, he has won Bremen and Lille regionals, which for any normal human standards, that would be fantastic. But by his own self-inflicted Superman standards, he is due for a big international finish. And recently, Stefan has been the victim of making the finals a few times, but never been able to convert into a victory.
He had them both in hand. Leon is our Liverpool 2023 champion.
Huge congratulations to Leon. The underdog story comes true again, and unfortunately Stefan is going to have to settle for another second place.
And sure, you could argue that even if he loses here, that he has secured that big finish, sure. But remember, Stefan has won this international event twice before, a feat that has been done only one other time by one other person.
That's right, I'm with the back-to-back European International Champion, Gustavo Wada.
So if Stefan was to win here today, he becomes the only person to win the same international 3 times. Absolutely incredible. And to do it with NAIC being the biggest event of the year players numbers wise is actually mind-blowing. But his opponent Andrew will be doing everything he can to stop that from happening and get the USA another title under their belt. Now while Andrew's resume might not be as long or as star-studded as Stefan, oh my goodness, he was having one of the best 24-month runs in Pokemon history.
And let's welcome up our champion here in Indianapolis, Andrew Hedrick.
In the 2022-23 season, he won the Orlando Regionals.
Taking down the biggest regional championship so far.
I would have to say that my favorite memory is when I won my first regional, because at that point, I hadn't really put up very many results yet. I wasn't really expecting that out of myself. I knew I was going to come in and play the best that I could every set, but I was pretty surprised to win my first regional, and it gave me a lot of confidence moving forward.
And then just 20 days after that, he won Knoxville Regionals.
Regional champion yet again in just a matter of 2 weeks. Can anyone stop him?
And then 2 months after that, he won the special event in Pagoda. Like, who actually does that? And worth noting, only a few weeks after Pagoda, he got 3rd place in Fresno as well. Then this season, only 4 weeks before the NAIC Championships, he won Indianapolis Regionals as well. With this frankly unparalleled levels of domination this season, it's safe to say Andrew is probably the hottest player in the world coming into this event. But despite all that surreal regional level success, he hasn't had a single international or world's top cut yet. A win here would catapult Andrew into the pantheon of truly elite, best of the best tier of players, and doing so at the biggest event of the year would be his crown jewel, and give him unparalleled levels of confidence going into the World Championships a month later in Hawaii. And he is hungry to get an international win under his belt. There is a sneaky thing Andrew has in his favour though, and that's his deck choice. You see, Stefan is playing the Gardevoir archetype, which revolves around Gardevoir EX, a crazy card which lets you accelerate as many psychic energy from your discard pile to your psychic type Pokemon as you like in a turn, but you would have to place 2 damage counters on them for each energy attached. And while this is obviously very strong, it must be said that the deck hasn't had a signature international or worlds win yet. When it first entered the metagame, it got 2nd place at EUIC, then got 2nd place again at the 2023 World Championships. So surely it's positioned well to finally get a 1st place finish, right? Well, it could be argued that the version of Gardevoir which got 2nd place at Worlds was actually superior to the current version that Stefan is playing, since back then it had access to Zacian V and Brainwave Gardevoir, both of which provided heavy hitters and consistency as well. The current iteration of Gardevoir that Stefan is playing now has to use Drifloon and Screamtail as big hitters, both of which are more vulnerable and have a lower damage output than their older counterparts. But one thing that Gardevoir does extremely well, and very similarly to Stefan's Zoroark decks from the past, is draw cards, because it mostly relied on Kirlia's refinement ability, which is exactly the same as Zoroark's trade ability. So with that in mind, Stefan should feel very similar with this deck, and so did the rest of the field, since it had a staggering 6 in the top 8 slots of this event, meaning it was definitely the metagame pick for the event. But it has to be said that Gardevoir has been known for falling at the final hurdle. And Andrew's deck, Lost Box, well, is definitely the underdog, but it has taken an international down before, OCIC in Australia. And it is worth noting that this is the first event where we had the Twilight Masquerade set legal, and this format shake-up had revived the Lost Box deck, which before has been constantly seen as a top 3 deck in format, but after some unfavourable metagame shifts, it had really fallen off. It relied on getting cards in the Lost Zone via Comfate and Colossus Experiment, so then you could use cards like Mirage Gate to accelerate energy to your attackers, and Lost Mine to spread 12 damage counters anywhere you like. And with Twilight Masquerade, some new cards got added to the deck, like Blood Moon Ursaluna and Iron Thorns EX. This had thrust Lost Box straight back into the limelight, and it was the only other deck represented in this event's top 8 as well. But it must be said that Andrew's deck has really let him down in the early turns of this game 1 here in the finals, where he found himself with this sorry board state.
2 prize cards left to take. Andrew Hedrick playing a Turbo Lost Box deck and not a single card in the Lost Zone as of now.
But it wasn't all his fault though.
I love this Klefki from Stefan because that will definitely slow down Andrew's whole deck.
You see, Stefan had managed to stick Klefki in the active turn 1, which turns off all basic Pokemon abilities whilst it's in the active. And this is disastrous for Andrew, since that turns off Radiant Greninja and Comfey, making them both useless, meaning all he can do is attach energy to Iron Hands EX and pass it over. Now Stefan does have to be careful of the Iron Hands though, since if left unchecked it will rip him apart.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Andrew use that Iron Hands very effectively, attacked 3 times, and that was pretty much it.
Since his Amp You Very Much attack will KO pretty much all of Stefan's Pokemon in one hit, and take an extra prize card in doing so, meaning if Andrew can use Amp You Very Much 3 times, he will win this game. That was okay for now though, since Stefan had developed his board and was attacking with a Flutter Mane, Another annoying card for Andrew, since it would turn off your opponent's active Pokemon abilities whilst it's in the active, and would deal 90 damage to the active and spread 20 to a bench Pokemon. This would stop Andrew from using flower selecting, which in turn would stop him getting cards in the loss zone, which would slow his strategy down massively. And that extra 20 damage snipe will chip away at the Iron Hands as well. But that's okay though, because as long as the Iron Hands could use Ampu very much once, it would even up this game for Andrew, which is why when Stefan boss KO'd it with Gardevoir EX, Andrew was really against the ropes.
Boss's orders on that Iron Hands EX. This is brutal here, Pablo.
Even healing the damage from
Yes.
the Flutter Mane in case he needs to continue with a lock and continue the pressure. Stefan
Wow,
Ivanov,
look
4
at
prizes
that.
up in this game 1 of the final.
But now, Andrew can finally start his comeback, as he now has abilities back on board. And since Stefan didn't have a Manaphy in play, his bench Pokemon were vulnerable to damage. So if Andrew was able to power up that Radiant Greninja, he could target down 2 bench Curlier for 2 prize cards and remove all of Stefan's draw power at the same time, which is exactly what he did. But make no mistake about it, he still had a mountain to climb to get back into this game.
Yeah, very nicely done by Andrew, making sure he gets the most out of that one turn he had with abilities finally available to him. All those comfies coming in clutch, the Call Restop, the coming in clutch.
Stefan still had the advantage, but he did make life as awkward for Stefan as possible, who was now out of draw power. That meant he was forced to use Iono to reset both players' hands down to the amount of prize cards they had left. So Stefan actually put his hand size down to 2 and Andrew got 4. This really limited his options, and all Stefan could do was KO the Greninja with Gardevoir. But that did put Stefan only 1 KO away from winning. But Andrew noticed that Stefan only had 1 Ralts in play. So that meant if he could KO it with a Pokemon with a HP stat high enough so it was outside of range of Gardevoir's Miracle Force, he could do the unthinkable and have a chance at winning this game. But now this wasn't going to be easy, but Andrew was able to do exactly that.
Next turn, that's 2 prize cards down off that Iron Hands EX. 2 prize card knockout.
Meaning all Andrew had to do was use Iron Hands EX again one more time to steal this game back from the jaws of defeat. And with Stefan's limited draw power, he was running out of options fast. But luckily for him, a new addition to the deck courtesy of Twilight Masquerade happened to provide his lifeline. Monkey Dory was almost exclusively here for its ability, Adrenabrain, who would let you move 3 damage counters from one of your Pokemon to one of your opponent's Pokemon once per turn. This is fantastic since you can start to undo the damage from Psychic Embrace while also bolstering your damage output into your opponent. But it also had an attack that rarely gets used but would be good in this scenario. Mind Bend would deal 60 damage and confuse your opponent. Now to be fair, confusion is pretty rare to come up in the Pokemon TCG. But if you try to attack with a confused Pokemon, you have to flip a coin. And if tails, that attack will fail and you hit yourself for 30 damage. So that's exactly what Stefan does. And that 60 damage is rather relevant, so now that Iron Hands can be KO'd by Gardevoir EX next turn.
Stefan does promote the Monkey Dory, and this game might come down to a confusion flip from the Mind Bend.
It's getting exciting here.
And with Andrew's hand and deck running super small, all he can do is boss his orders up Manaphy and attempt to swing again with Ampu very much, putting this game down to a coin flip. If heads, Ampu very much will go through and Andrew wins the game. If tails, Stefan gets the win by attacking with Gardevoir EX next turn. If heads, Andrew gets his signature international performance win, joins the global elite of the elite and etches his name in the Hall of Fame. If tails, Stefan does the absolute unthinkable and makes a mockery of the biggest event of the year for the 3rd time.
Down to a confusion flip. It's gonna come down to an Ampu very much confusion coin flip.
Here we go. The most important coin flip in Pokemon history.
Of there, but yeah, that Iron Hands EX still in a state of confusion. Here's the coin flip here. Is it gonna be heads or tails?
No.
It's off
Where
the
is
screen.
It's heads. Wow, what an ending. Ampu very much confusion head flip to finish this. Allows Hedrick to make an unlikely comeback. What did we just watch?
But wait, the final isn't over. Since it is a best of 3 format, Stefan still has a chance, and he did win game 2 in very convincing fashion.
But after that, it's just a pass over to Stefan now, who's lining up this Scream Tail here.
I think he has it, 120 damage with that Roaring Scream onto the Iron Hands, and Stefan Ivanov will be able to win game 2 of this Grand Masters final.
The Scream Tail coming in with a nice, loud, roaring scream.
And somehow, it could be argued that game 3 ends in a more dramatic fashion, because of the time rules in Pokemon. Basically, once time has been called, there will be an additional 3 turns. And after that, whoever has the most KOs will win. So game 3 will basically turn into a race for prize cards and KOs. And that's exactly what happened. Andrew was able to take the first prize card with Cramorant.
Hand onto this Radiant Greninja.
And it looks like Hedrick will be able to take a prize card here. That Spit Innocently is available. Lost Provisions activated with 5 cards in Lost Zone at this point in time. Andrew Hedrick will be the first one to take a prize card. 30 seconds on the clock.
Yes.
Stefan misses a KO, but does attack with Flutter Mane to keep up the disruption.
Key here for Andrew Hedrick, being able to take that first prize card now is going to take these 90 damage counters here from, or damage in general from Flutter Mane onto the Cramorants, and that Comfey on the bench being ticked up to 5 damage counters.
Now, Stefan did not take a prize card this turn. That means if Andrew manages to take 2 prizes, he will be able to pull very far ahead. Now,
Andrew gets around it by using Iron Bundle to push it out the active, and then takes a KO with Sableye Lost Mine, removing Stefan's draw power, again like in game 1.
But still an additional prize card here for Andrew Hedrick, going down 2 prize cards, and it's up to Stefan now to make something happen here, Pablo.
Stefan responds by using Iono to limit Andrew's hand size and to take a massive 2 prize card turn with Flutter Mane, evening it back up.
Flutter Mane in range. It
is 2 damage, right?
It has 90 HP left, I believe. Exactly. Does it not? It has 90 HP minus 40. That's 50. No, it has 100 HP. There's going to be 10 HP left on that Flutter Mane.
So this means Andrew needs to take a prize card this turn. And thanks to that Iono from Stefan, his draw power is very limited. Hyper Blower will get the flower selecting back online at least, but then disaster for Andrew. His Pokestop misses everything.
It all comes down to this Pokestop Boo. We need an S-Ball, we need a Puff, and perhaps we don't see any of that. Not great choices. So now it all comes down to this Flower Select. This Flower Select will determine Andrew's fate. Can he find an S-Ball? Can he find another Colress perhaps? Losing to Colress there was so huge.
That honestly couldn't have been a worse Pokestop for Andrew. Stefan's Manaphy is currently protecting his bench Pokemon from Greninja, and the active guard of IX has too much HP for anything in Andrew's deck to deal with. This means the final is going to come down to this flower selecting. After a nail-biting game 1, game 3 comes down to these 2 cards. For Stefan, a chance to win the biggest event of the year for a 3rd time, giving him more titles than the whole of the American player base combined, a ridiculous feat. And for Andrew, a chance to cement his career with a finish at the biggest event of the year. Welcome to a moment in Pokemon TCG history.
Trying to maintain composure here, but we're gonna have to see what happens.
Oh, we are asking for a judge shuffle. Stefan making sure that the judge is the one that will determine the fate.
The
North American Championship, and there it is. The prime catcher is found, and Greninja will knock out the Klefki and will allow Andrew to become the North America International Champion.